everyone, it is your favorite little hermit, Leslie here. So today I decided, because I was having a rough day, I was going to sit and watch some true crime with my fuzzy socks. So I did that, and I felt good for a little bit, and so then I decided to do my makeup, and then I was like, hey, Bailey Sarian does it, why can't I? Well, it was harder than I thought. But anyways, here is a video of me talking about the new Netflix series Unsolved Mysteries and episode 1, the case of Rivera. Hope you enjoy. You might know, on Netflix, they just released this new series called Unsolved Mysteries. So, obviously, I'm obsessed. What can I say? And I thought it would be a good idea to talk about the first episode. So the first episode talks about this guy. His name is Rivera. Oh, child. Rivera. So Ray disappears out of nowhere. Everybody's trying to figure out what's going on. It's unsolved. That's why it's on Unsolved Mysteries. So let's talk about a timeline. Ray gets married, right? Ray's happy. Ray's trying to have children. He's all excited. He's like, yes, I found the love of my life. I don't know where my concealer is. Ray didn't think that. That's what I'm thinking. I'm not Ray. I bet it's in my bag. So Ray's married. He's like, I'm trying to have babies. I'm so happy. This is what his wife says that he was thinking. I'm so happy, life is great, blah, blah, blah. Word. Cool. Sounds good. So, on the night of May 15th, 2016, Ray was being a little weird. Ray was sitting and worrying for the past 2 weeks. He was just like kind of anxious, which was unlike him. He wasn't really normally scared about anything, but Ray was scared. Okay? He wouldn't talk about what, but he was scared. So on the night of the 15th, they have this like alarm, like an intruder alarm. That thing never went off. First of all, their house was adorable, just FYI. It was like this like mansion cottage thing. So cute. Side note, just so you know, adorable. So they had this like alarm, and it never went off, but that night it went off. And this was the day before Ray's disappearance. So the alarm goes off, and the wife calls the police after Ray goes downstairs, and this is a look. I look like Donald Trump. I'm feeling it. China. Anyways. Too much? Too soon? Sorry. So Ray ends up going outside with a baseball bat, but he like looked scared, which I probably would too, but apparently according to the wife, that was unlike him. He wasn't scared of anything. So she was like, okay, like that's bizarre. And he had been worrying, remember? So she's convinced somebody's coming for Ray. So she calls the police, and they were like, nah, it was a squirrel. Her words, not mine. Okay, whatever. So the next day, May 16th, 1 a.m., alarm goes off. And downstairs, the window has been tampered with. Somebody was trying to come in the house. Why? We don't know. That's why it's unsolved. Keep up. So, I really wish this had a mirror. Everything's fine. So, that same day, Ray gets a phone call. So the wife of Ray has her friend Claudine spend the night. Claudine overhears Ray on the phone. He gets this phone call. Bring, bring. What up? It's your boy Ray. Back at it again. So apparently the phone call did not last long. He literally just answered the phone and then immediately went, oh, and hung up. Ran down the stairs, flew out the house. Their words, not mine. He was in a panic. Right? So he flies out of the house, never comes home. Now again, he was living a happy life. Nothing was out of the ordinary. He was feeling himself. His wife was feeling herself. They were feeling their marriage. Everything was peachy keen. So he doesn't come home. So a couple days later, let me get my notes. So everything is, a couple days later, May 22nd. The wife of Ray goes out with her parents to look for his car because he's missing. They find his car. Several days later, in a parking lot. It was 6 days later. I should be specific here. It was 6 days later. I'm gonna cut this part out. Okay. After his disappearance on May 16th, 6 days later, Ray's wife and her parents go out to look for his car because he's missing. Still hasn't come home. So they're looking for his car, and her mom is like, that's the car. I see it. This is, again, her words, not mine. I'm not being dramatic. This was literally her, which I would be dramatic too if Evan disappeared. So let's give her that. So the mom was like, hey, that's the car. And the dad's like, are you sure? And they're like, no, that's the car. It was the car. So they call the police, bring, police come and everything. And they're like, oh shit, it's the car. So they look inside the car, not a goddamn thing was in it. So they look inside the car, not a thing was in it, not a single thing. It was squeaky clean, no evidence, none. Crap, but they found the car. So, and there was a parking ticket, which thank God there was, because so the parking ticket was left on the morning after his disappearance. So that means that the car must have been parked there overnight. So he literally ran out of the house. This is the timeline so far. He ran out of the house in a panic, got in his car, drove. They found the car near his work at something Berry and Associates. Hold on, let me get it right. Stansberry and Associates. So you should know his BFF, Porter Stansberry, he moved to Baltimore to be with his BFF Porter Stansberry and work for his company. Okay. Stansberry and Associates, that's where he works. That's where the car was found. Near there. Parking ticket. Left there overnight. He ran out of the house. All right? You're keeping up with me because I'm not keeping up with myself. This is very difficult. Okay, I think I can multitask now. I think I got this. So a few days later, on May 24th, the police get a call from 3 people. 3 guys, I'm assuming. I think that's what the documentary said. And the Belvedere Hotel is this huge, ritzy hotel in Baltimore. And the police get a call about this hole in the roof of what they called, I think they called it the church, but it was this abandoned conference room in between the parking garage and the hotel. It was wedged right in between there. So there was a hole in the roof of that. So the police come and they want to talk to the manager of the hotel and go inside where the hole in the roof was. So they open the door and the first thing that they smell is a dead body. I mean, that's a pretty distinct smell. So they smell the dead body, they find a body. Ray's family get a phone call. It was Ray's body. So May 24th, Ray was found dead. So the autopsy report, I'm going to set this down for a second and I'm going to read what was on the autopsy report. One second. Okay, autopsy report. We took a little detour. My tea is cold. It's fine. So the report says that Ray suffered contusions of the chest, abrasions of the torso, bilateral, meaning both sides, clavicle fractures, clavicle is your collarbone, fracture of the sternum, that's your breastbone, multiple rib fractures, lacerations of the pulmonary blank, it cut off, and the right ventricles of the heart, bilateral, again, both sides, lung contusions, hemorrhaging of the scalp. That could have been, just an FYI, that could have just been due to decomposition. I mean, he was out there for several days by that point, just so you know. But it could not be. I mean, he did fall. Just wanted to throw that out there. Multiple blank, again, it cut off, but I'm assuming like contusions, lacerations, something like that. Damage. A lot of damage to the frontal, bilateral, frontal, parietal, temporal, and it cut off again after that. But parts of the brain. There's a lot of damage to the brain itself. There was also, remember this part, there was a fracture on the right leg. There's 2 fractures of the tibia and the fibula. So his shin was fractured. He also had bone protruding there. Not a fun time. His maxilla and zygomatic bone, which is the jaw bones, they were fractured bilaterally, and his nose was broken. I do think it's important to note that there was a toxicology report that reported that he was not on any psychoactive medications and that he was not being seen by a psychiatrist and was not known to have any psychiatric condition. But I'll talk about that more later. So there's a lot of theories. I told you earlier about how like here's the roof where there was the hole, and then over here is the parking garage, and way up here is like the huge hotel. So they at first were like, this is clearly a suicide. And so they were testing to see if he had jumped from somewhere. So there was 3 places he could have jumped from. The hotel is a very tall building, so they checked the ledge. I think it's important to note that Ray was deathly terrified of heights. So this is just my personal commentary. He likely would not commit suicide via heights. My personal commentary. Just out there. Okay. So they attempted to see like what it was like from the ledge, but because it's such an old building, the decorations were very ornate, and you would have to really try and maneuver around the side of the building to try and get over to where that hole was, and that would be impossible, 1, and 2, why wouldn't you just jump off there? Why would you jump off onto the garage? So there's that. You could suggest that if he was like running from something, again, he would have fallen the way before that, trying to maneuver the ledge. But also then if he's running from something, then that indicates that there was foul play. So they also saw if he was jumping from different areas of the hotel. either way, in that aspect, both the ledge and different areas of the hotel, he would have had to go through somebody's room or somebody's office. So that's really not likely. And then they also saw if he was to jump from the parking garage, but you would have had to be Superman to get, because, like, I mean, the hole was here. He would have had to really be horizontally flying for a second to make that hole. And also, the parking garage roof was about 20 feet up from where the hole was, so he likely would have lived. I think it's also important to note that the fractures to his tibia and fibula, to his shin area, they were ruled as inconsistent with the jump. So that suggests foul play. Throwing that out there, just so you know. You make your own decision. Anyways, so that's ruled out. There's other things that indicated that there might be foul play, or that something was staged. I mentioned that he was scared of heights. Also, his cell phone and glasses were found near the hole where he had fallen through. And neither were damaged. However, his flip-flops that were also found there, they had like scuff marks and one was broken. So all of this indicates that there might have been like a staged incident. It's also important to note, so his wife, for their wedding present, because like they had just gotten married, his wife had gotten him this really ornate money clip. It had like an engraving and it had his initials engraved in it, and that was like his thing. He took it everywhere. He didn't leave without it. To this day it hasn't been found, so that suggests that somebody took it and that had his money, his ID, and all of that in it. So that means that somebody would have if it wasn't foul play, then that means that somebody would have discovered the crime scene before and not reported it, which is still really fishy. So in regards to, you would think with a ritzy hotel that there would be like cameras, and there were, but the one that was pointing at the roof was broken, oddly enough. And the hotels, are like the cameras within the hotel, did not show him being in the hotel at all. He never went inside the hotel. Fishy. So I think it's also important to note, there was, ironically, I'm going to say this, it's important to note that there was a note. I'm going to discuss the note in detail at the end of this, just because it's so profound. And the documentary really didn't go into it that much, so I did a lot of scrounging on the internet, on Reddit, and other theories. And I also took screenshots of the note, trying to figure out what it said myself, and then I found a link where somebody did that all for me because it was really blurry in the documentary. So somebody went through and they transcribed and translated what this note said. It was found, I should add, it was found on the back of his computer. But first, I want to talk about the conclusion of this case. There's a lot of weird things. So the conclusion of this case, despite all of this evidence, was ruled as a suicide, despite like all of the weird fishiness. However, it was ruled a suicide by the police. However, the case is still open today because the medical examiner put that, because of like all like the discrepancies, she put that it was undetermined what his cause of death was. So that means that there was not enough evidence to indicate foul play or suicide. Not at all. So, it's also important to note that the wife claims that allegedly the medical examiner pulled her into her office and shut the door and said, quote, I know what they're, the cops, trying to do, meaning make it into a suicide. We aren't going to close this case. She also mentioned about how what was not consistent was like the fall and the shins being broken. They weren't consistent with like a break when you fall, if that makes sense. So there's that. It's also really important to note that the lead detective on the case, Detective Byer, he was potentially the only cop that thought that this was a murder, or that claimed that this was a murder and was investigating it as a murder. All the other cops were saying, oh, it was a suicide. 3 weeks into the case, he was reassigned to a different case and was not on the case at all. And he was the lead detective on the case. Sounds like a cover-up, in my opinion. Allegedly, in my opinion, it sounds like a cover-up. That's all I'm saying. So let's talk about this note. I'm excited to talk about this note. Okay. So, first off, the note keeps talking about the game. Now, immediately, I didn't see this theory anywhere. So I'm going to talk about the theories about it first. And I'm going to read some stuff. I'm going to be here on my little computer and read this to you. And then I'm going to talk about my opinion, because my opinion matters the most because I'm a smart bitch. Anyways. So, one quote from the note says, "That was a well-played game. Congratulations to all who participated. I hope you enjoyed it, but it was time to wake up. So, here I am." So, this Redditor commented that there is a lot of references to games, and there was one movie called The Wire that was really, really similar. And it says, like, it's all in the game, also set in Baltimore. It was still on the air at the time of Ray's death. So this movie had come out at the time of Ray's death, so he likely watched it. Within the note, there was a lot of talk about, like, different movies. Ray was a playwright, or a screenwriter, excuse me. He was a screenwriter. So he included, like, he kind of, like, added random actors as well as people he knew, including Stanley Kubrick. And he also commented on some of his favorite movies. So that was a little weird. I mean, the note, to be completely honest, sounded like a lot of rambling. It sounded similar to the ramblings of a paranoid schizophrenic, which I've encountered. So I would know what they're like, and it sounded really similar. However, I want to add again, he was not on any meds. He wasn't known for being, like, out there or having any paranoia or anything, really. As far as, you know, what his brother, his mother, and his wife have said. So there's that. Also, it could be that he was, like, talking in codes, kind of, because in one area of the letter, it's the very first sentence, it talks about a volcano. It's bizarre. So the wife, when she found this note, she was the first to find the note. Obviously, it was in her home on her computer. I should say behind her computer. She Googled the first sentence because it just sounded bizarre. And what the first thing that came up was the Freemasons, which is interesting. I explained that his work, I think I did, his work was the person that called him, you know, like right before he rushed out the door in a panic, his work called him and he was like, oh, hung up and ran. That was the last thing he said was, oh, and hung up. So Stansberry, his little homie, his BFF, immediately after, like within hours after they found the body, lawyered up and refused to talk to police. This is the same man that before he disappeared, he put up $1,000 reward to try and find the body, but as soon as they find the body, he's like, no, I want nothing to do with this, and completely shut down and won't say anything. And as soon as the police and people were asking questions to Stansberry and Associates, Porter Stansberry's company where Ray worked, he put a gag order on all employees. Now, why would you do that if you weren't guilty, Porter? Excuse me? Who does that? I thought that was your best friend. Even if I would get, I don't understand. And it's not like they were, pointing the finger at him, or I would understand if he was a suspect, but he wasn't a suspect as far as we know. So why? That makes no sense. So here is my theory. There was one section of the documentary in which they talk about how Porter had invested in this sketchy stock to do in the stock market, stonks, that had something to do with Russia, but it was illegal. So there was a huge lawsuit, $1 million lawsuit with the government or something. And he was like, oh, it's my amendment right. And they were like, no, it's not. You're fucking with Russia, baby. You got no rights now. So, Ray's job, partially, when he moved to Baltimore to work for Porter, was to kind of do some PR work and build his reputation back up, because it was tanked after that lawsuit and that whole big thing, which it probably should be, because it's a little fishy. It's just all really fishy. So I think it's interesting. My personal opinion, I think that Ray was murdered, obviously. And I think that his homie Porter had something to do with it. I think that Porter was the one that was on the phone. Either that or one of Porter's employees was like, oh, meet here. But I also feel like, does anybody know, there was this one movie that I watched a while ago, and it was it had, oh shit, she played that bitchy girl in American Horror Story. Anyways, it doesn't matter. It's gonna drive me crazy though. Anyways, so there was this movie that she was in with Machine Gun Kelly. Highly recommend, even though it's kind of traumatizing, trigger warning. And it's called, it's talking about the game, and you play this game on your phone, and you're challenged to do certain things, and it's however far you can go, you get more fame or something, and then there's this huge arena. So I almost wonder if the Freemasons had a system that was the game. I think that Porter and Ray were both part of the Freemasons, or were trying to be a part of the Freemasons, and so they had to participate in this game. And I think it was Ray's turn to participate in the game, and it went wrong. I think somebody murdered him because of the game. Maybe. I honestly don't know. I really don't. I know 100% in my heart that this was a murder, and not because the documentary was leaning towards that. There's just way too many things that were leaning towards a murder, and it just doesn't make sense for him to commit suicide the way that he did. If he were to commit suicide, I'm not saying that that's not likely, but I am saying that because for example, I have a phobia of driving. There's no way in hell I would ever commit suicide by driving headfirst into a Mack truck, to be very gruesome. I mean, that makes no sense. You would think that he would avoid that method. You know, if you're deathly terrified of heights, why would you jump to your death? And also, it's really weird that his best friend isn't talking. And I know that killers a lot of the time will, like, they'll talk to police first, or like they'll like volunteer to like give their DNA and shit and like sound like they're there to help, or like they'll like help look for the body when they're the killer, just so that they're ruled out as a suspect. So that would make perfect sense if he was like, oh, like I'll give this $1,000 reward to anybody that helps find my best friend, and then as soon as they find him, he's like, no, I got a lawyer up, I'm not saying shit. Like, that makes no sense. Like, if that was my best friend, there's no way, like, even if I was a suspect, I'd be like, I'll go to jail, put me in the electric chair, like, find my friend, like, do anything, like, find the real killer, like, I don't know. So, yeah, that is the case of Rivera. I should mention this was back in 2006, so it has been a while, but yeah, I thought this was a really interesting case, and if you guys want me to do more videos like this, I would totally be happy to. So yeah, thank you for watching. Bye.